Or standing?
Okay.
If you want.
Whatever.
She'll start it that way.
Okay.
I'm flexible.
So I'm Vicki Trippi, and I know most everyone in the room, but it's nice to meet a new person that I haven't worked with and someone who doesn't live in Greene County, so I don't work with as often, both. I'm the volunteer coordinator for Greene County Democrats, and part of what we're talking about today is organizing and how you become an organizer. And what I would say is sometimes it's just saying, I want to make a difference, and stepping forward and saying, I have some time, I have some skills, I care, and I'm willing to get involved. And so for David and me, it started in 2004, the year we retired. A former student was running for state rep and asked us if we would help him in his campaign, and we said sure because we love him. But he lost in the primary. So that was August. We went over to the Cary campaign headquarters and we said, we'd like to help. Give us a job. Give us a big job that nobody else wants. And they looked at me and said, well, would you be the precinct captain organizer? And I said, I have no idea what a precinct is. And I have no idea what a precinct captain organizer does. But if you will explain both of them to me, and if it will help Cary become president, sure, we'll do that. So they explained both, and what they said they wanted is one person in each precinct to try to reach out to voters in that area. And this is August before the November election, and I said, so how many people do you have lined up? And they said, David will probably have a different memory. My memory is something like 15 people. Now, I lived in Chicago for a few years, and I had watched the Chicago Democratic machine work. And I know that you don't go into an election in August and not have people lined up to help you. So I started trying to find people who would help. And I organized them by precinct and legislative district and state senate district, and created forms, which I'm going to give to a couple of you in a minute, that said, if you're willing to volunteer, what are the things that you're willing to do? And we started compiling a list of people who would help. And we now have about 1,300 people on that list, which is not 15. Now, not all of those people will do what you want every time you ask them, but I'll give you an example. We had a fundraiser at our home for Crystal Quaid this spring, and even though it was terrible weather, we had 70 people show up. And when we compared the people who showed up against the people on the list, well over 95% of the people who showed up were on that list, because they are the people who care. They won't always call when you want them to. They won't always canvass. They won't always come to events. But often they will do something. So one of the things I would say about organizing is that you actually have to create databases. And Kathy helps me every Thursday. She is fabulous at keeping up with my email changed, the phone number changed, I moved, and trying to keep up. And sometimes the phone numbers go bad, so we email people and say, your phone number doesn't work, would you, or their email goes bad, so we phone them and say, your email address doesn't work. And it sounds like pretty routine things, and somebody laughed at me the other day and said, I've never been with you anywhere where when you meet people, you don't ask, are you on the Greene County Democrats emailing and mailing list? Would you like to be? And then make sure that they get there. That's baseline organizing. You have to know who your supporters are. You have to keep track of them so that you can reach out to them when you need them. And I guess one thing I would say about how it helps is in the last election where Republican turnout just overwhelmed us in Greene County. And a long time ago, I guess it was 2006, Clara McCaskill said to us, if you can turn out 40% of the vote in Greene County, I can win. Well, in 2016, in a really awful year, we got 38.5% for Jason Kander in Greene County. It wasn't what we wanted. It wasn't enough for him to win, but we sure didn't get swamped the same way that some other areas in Missouri got swamped. And I think part of it is because we keep networking. We keep building those things. So that's base part. But the thing I would like to say today that we're trying to do to move forward, when this event's over, we have a full slate of candidates in Greene County. Yay, and a lot of it.
Good candidates.
Yay, good candidates
good
too.
candidates.
Yay,
Yes.
Crystal Quaid. Yay, Skylar at the Greene County. People all working together, and across the state, many more Democrats running than we have had, and they need our help. So we're going to start organizing at least 3 days of canvassing in every legislative district in Greene County. And we've talked to Jimmy Moore, who works with the college Democrats. We've talked to Sam Smith, who works with the high school Democrats. I've talked to John Shaughnessy, who's in Webster County, but the candidate in his area is also Greene County. I've talked to the people running in Christian County, and we've said, okay, let's unify our forces. Let's try to recruit people so that we have 5 to 7 people in every legislative district for 3 days. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you have that many people knocking on doors, that's a lot of voter contact, and it may help our candidates. And when you talk to people, the other thing I'd say we ask is, what are you willing to do? The hardest thing to get people to do is to make phone calls and to canvass. But sometimes they'll host a house party. Sometimes they'll write a letter to the editor. Sometimes they'll come to a fundraiser. So the other thing I'd say is you have to find people's strengths. And then you have to ask them to help you with the things that are their strengths, and don't put them down if they can't do everything. If they can do something, that's a wonderful thing to do, right? So I wanted to give you a list all of you, these are our Democratic candidates that are going to be on the ballot in Greene County.
I'd like one of those.
And,
Can I have one?
Yeah, yes. And one thing I would like to ask is if there are any candidates on this list that you would be willing to help, either by hosting a fundraiser or coming to a fundraiser or canvassing or making phone calls or any of those things. What the second thing I would like to give you, and you create your own if you want to be an organizer, the second thing I want to give you is a volunteer form, and if you've already filled one of these out, you could keep this just as a sample. And if you would write down on this sheet the candidate that you would like to help and the way that you would like to help that candidate, we'll make sure to add it to the database, and you can get, it may not be me on the phone because we have people, people who will make calls, that you will be contacted and somebody would say to you, you said you might be willing to go door to door, and we're having this canvass for this candidate, and we wondered if you would be free any one of these 3 days that we're having a canvass to come and talk to somebody. Does that make sense? So if you want to take a minute and look at the list, and if any of you are willing to help any of those candidates, and you would fill that out and give it back to me, we would, as I say, we would love to have 5 to 7 people in every candidate's district each of those 3 days. Yes.
Good
Is that-
introduction.
Just
Yeah.
love that you had an ask ready.
That I had an ask. I always have an ask ready.
She's done this forever, man. You know how the game works.
Well, I just know, I had a candidate tell me the other day that this person was feeling very isolated and very alone because she had committed herself to be out there as a candidate and there weren't people helping. And another candidate who was standing nearby said, yes, I understand how you feel. So we're just trying to. So does anybody have any questions? Or Kathy, you help with this all the
But
time.
I don't canvass and make,
No, but you make phone calls and you do data entry.
I'll get my husband to canvass.
I'll hold you to that.
I know, Charlie Noor and Rob Bailey probably. But, no, I really enjoy volunteering, and if you do what you love, then it's not a chore at all, so.
Right.
The computer programmer, and to me, data entry is like a snap, and I just love it, it's just easy, so, anyway.
That's what I said
That's what I
earlier
would say.
at one of our things too, is like when we play to people's strength, like Jolene's thing is that she's here live streaming all these, and this helps make these a lot better because now we have a way to get that out to other people.
Exactly.
Or like when we had Claude here earlier taking pictures and everything, like that's something that I don't know how to do, but
Right.
he knows, and
Right.
that's like his wheelhouse. So
Right.
and that's really important. So part of what I try to do whenever I talk to people is like ask them, what, like if it's a college student, what are you studying? What are you interested in? What, clubs are you a part of? Like where can I find a place to put you where you are doing what you like? Because then you'll do it better and you'll want to do it more. And then
Right.
maybe secretly I can like get you to do the things that you wouldn't like to do as much, like knock the doors.
And they do
Secret
that, and I
levels.
do them sometimes.
Right, right, exactly. So,
Yeah.
So this is both positive and negative, okay? But whatever you're going to do it soon. And you really, if you want to help the local candidates, you really do need to try to get as many people to volunteer as soon as possible, because when Claire McCaskill comes into town, assuming she does, and sets up an office, those people will not be from here, and they will be aggressive. And whereas we try to do what Vicki said, which is we try to honor the types of things that people tell us they want to do, those people will not. They're here, they want to get Claire elected, they know the importance of the race, and they will pound on those volunteers, and they won't have a second thought if they're told on a Thursday that the person never wants to be called again to call. They'll do data entry. On Monday, they will receive a call, and a really nasty call, saying, "Why aren't you in here calling?" So now is the time when you really need to establish your volunteers for the local candidates, for the candidates here.
Yeah, that's a big problem I have sometimes with these when we bring. Not to say that bringing talent from out of the district is always a bad thing, but when they leave, then the organization leaves, and I think that really serves to hurt our local party a lot. I know Vicki could probably attest to this more than I could, but I feel like when we are working at building our local structure, it lasts longer, and throughout election cycles and everything like that. So it's definitely something that I'm interested in helping organize more, and that's why I got involved, was to help organize where I live, even though it's super Republican, but still I think it's important everywhere.
And the other thing I would say is the hardest thing to do is to get people to the polls to vote. And especially if we all live in approximately the same set of values. We may not agree on everything, we may not agree all the time, but if you compare where we live ideologically with where Donald Trump lives ideologically, there's no comparison between the two, right? But if there's one thing that can cause someone to go to the polls to vote, whether it's voting no on A to repeal right to work, whether it's going to the polls to increase minimum wage, whether it's because they love the state rep candidate in your district, whether it's because they know that if we lose any more senators, any more Democratic senators, we could lose the Affordable Care Act and the health care that it does provide to people. If they have one reason that's enough of a reason to go to the polls, the chances are good that they'll vote for a whole lot of other things that we agree with also. Do you think?
Yeah. I think that's why it's so important to run at the grassroots level up, because it gives energy and it builds momentum for our upper candidates as well. When we're helping Crystal, we're tangentially helping Claire, we're tangentially helping all these, Cole and all these other people that are running. So
Another thing I would say is that I always work from the event backwards. So right now, I'm thinking that if you're going to recruit volunteers, you should be thinking about eventually there will be a get out the vote. And it is really important that you get people to set aside time, because we spend a lot of time getting people registered to vote. But if they actually don't vote, we did not accomplish our goal. It was a failed, we had a goal and we didn't accomplish it. The only way we accomplish it is if we get those people to the polls. So there probably will be a coordinated campaign, and they will really revolve it around Claire. But you really do need to get volunteers that are willing to carry it all the way through, and that are willing to understand that at one point, getting people to the polls is a really critical thing that we need to do.
And Stacy and I were talking about this earlier, but she said a great point that a lot of people that are maybe new to the organizing field think that organizing starts and ends at voting or that sort of thing. But really, it's getting out there, it's knocking the doors, it's it's really getting out in the field and talking to other people and recruiting other people into this process, because the people in this room can't do it alone. You know, we need help. And maybe you can talk about that more with, you know, what you do with Planned Parenthood, being out there in the field. And I see you in Jefferson City like every week, it seems like. So maybe you can tell us
Yay.
some more about that.
Thank you, Darren.
Yeah.
I was just having thoughts while the discussion was going on, and I know that right now is such an important time for candidates and for races and for the election, and we've got so much work to do, and we just have to do it, and we have to put everything we have into it because too much rides on it. My thinking, though, as well is not only is it hard to get people to vote, it's really hard to get people to continue to hold their legislators accountable after they're there. And I deal with that a lot from my perspective as a grassroots organizer at Planned Parenthood, because legislation is passed and at least filed, if not passed, every day in Jeff City that has over the years caused 2 abortion clinics in Springfield to close. And this goes back to like 2002, 2003. Where the state legislature just passes these laws slowly, incrementally over years that make it harder and harder for people to get access to abortion care and all reproductive rights, including birth control. And they also make it harder and harder for health centers to provide that care. So, and that I don't want to get stuck on reproductive rights solely, but that's just an example of how, you know, there are laws, and we could speak to other ones, right to work. I mean, a myriad of laws that are passed at the state level all the time that we don't hear about on the news, that you're not going to know about unless you keep up with it, that affect our lives every day. So just as important as getting good candidates to run and getting them elected is continuing to hold them accountable. And that includes if they are the one you voted for or if they're the one that you didn't vote for. And what I see a lot is people get really hopeless with the supermajority of Republicans right now in Jeff City. I see people get really hopeless and say, you know, what good does it do to talk to them? Well, that's our job. I mean, that's just as important as helping candidates. That's just as important as voting, is being involved in your state legislature and telling them what you think they should be doing. And when they don't do it, have a conversation with them. And I think it was Darren's post actually on Facebook one day that I saw somebody say, does anybody know how my legislator voted? And I said, call them and ask them. And then have a discussion with them about how they voted, whether you like it or whether you don't like it. And what Darren and I were talking about earlier was a lot of people just, I think volunteer coordinating is a really important part of organizing. It also is more than that, because all of these things that we're talking about are movements. And people have been working on these things before us. You know, the first unionizers started this. You know, the first people that were driving women to safe places to find an abortion were doing this. And this is a movement that spans over time. And that's what organizers, I think, you know, sometimes that's what we're thinking about. We can't do it alone. We can't. I mean, the very essence of our work is people power. Without that, we are nothing. Planned Parenthood can't stop all the bad laws against reproductive rights. I can't stop all the attacks on healthcare, reproductive healthcare. We need you. And, you know, there's a lot of strategy that goes with organizing that maybe sometimes people don't understand, especially when it comes to like trying to mitigate the damage of legislation. For example, right now there's a bill in Jeff City, and it's a bad bill. It's going to pass. But we're at least talking to the person who wrote it, the senator, trying to get them to add an amendment that would at least mitigate the damage of it. And a lot of work like that is being done by organizations. Promo, Jobs with Justice, I guess. I don't know. Do you guys do
We don't
any?
lobby very
Yeah,
much.
you don't lobby very much. About causes, maybe. Sometimes it's about causes more than candidates. But there are organizations out there that are doing that work, and we need people. You have constituent power. I think a lot of times people look to the organizations like, you guys are the experts, you have the power. We have no power, honestly. We have the power to build you, is what we have. We have the power to build you up, get you to Jeff City, give you the resources to use your constituent power continuously. And you know, when you think about it, right, that's what a democracy is you leveraging your constituent power. And the Democrats right now in Jefferson City, Representative Quaid, Representative Franks, Representative, who else? Deb Lavender, name some for me. Peter Meredith. They are such a minority, but they are leveraging their power. Yes. They are standing on the floor for 4 hours saying, I am not going to sit down, right? And then when the publicity gets out about them being silenced and not able to speak, then those are the things we build elections on.
Yes.
When that representative doesn't let her speak, and then he has a Democrat opponent that can keep that narrative going and talking about it, that's how we turn the tide. That's how people decide that they change their vote, because they see they're not being represented. So that is, I think, those were my thoughts, is just, it's a continuous job. It's a never-ending job. There's never-ending work to being in a democracy, to participating. And we all just, we need people. All of us need people. Candidates need people.
But if you're an organizer, let me check and make sure this would be true. Last night, you saw people walking around the room with signatures for Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be fairly certain that information is going to go into a database.
Thank you, because that was the biggest thing that my little ears lit up when you said that, and I totally forgot. I'd already forgotten my point. But yeah, databases are so important. And you will see us say, can you sign this petition that says I stand with Planned Parenthood? And everybody says, oh, I've signed it 1,000,000 times. I'm like, sign it again. Because as Vicki knows, keeping current contact information is paramount. And people don't always think to call up every organization they care about and say, hey, my phone number's changed. So every time you sign those, we have volunteers data enter them, and they enter it, they find that person, and they go, oh, this is a different phone number. They change it, and then our lists stay updated. And that databases are crucial. Keeping current information is crucial. Opening those emails and reading them, keeping up with people's websites that you care about is all, that helps us do our work. Because when I have people who keep up with things on their own and stay kind of that level of involved on their own, gosh, it makes our workload a lot lighter. Because it's a lot of work, and we care just like you all do, and we can't stop doing it because we care. So we really appreciate our people that show up and that do the work, because there is a lot of heavy lifting to this. Yeah.
I write one comment and listen to another. Very quick. In the 1930s, Ed Janicek, I think, pointed out what was called the Democrats had more than 70 U.S. senators. And in 1980s, when I worked for a newspaper, I know they had about 90 plus Democrats in the House of Representatives out of 163, I believe it is. So things can go back. One concern, I remember the Kerry campaign, and one thing I think happened during that, I was working with it, and all of a sudden they decided to pull all their main people out of Missouri and send them to Michigan or something, because Missouri was lost. They figured they'd go to, and that really hurt us, as you know, that morally, everything, it kind of disrupted the whole thing. So the volunteer should stay with the local too, can help the presidential candidate, but don't put both your feet in their box, so to speak. Another concern I had from earlier, you're talking, not concern, but in my area, everybody lives on acreage, they're far apart. I've knocked on doors, and some, not much recently, but in Willard or in Springfield, it's one thing, to do, because your houses are close. Up there, drive a quarter mile or something, go in the next driveway, meet the next pit bull or whatever, and even if not, I don't know, they're a minority of the people, but they're important. I don't know, reaching them, I've always found it frustrating in the 131st
It's harder.
district.
Yeah.
It's harder.
Yeah, in a large part, and I don't know if there's any magic answer to that or even suggestions. I used mailing once. I just mailed to everybody on their Democratic list. And we weren't 100% perfect on that list because I got these nasty replies, but on most people I didn't hear anything.
The other thing I would say, and I make people growl at me sometimes when I do this, but I very seldom canvass for only one person. I would go into the McCaskill headquarters the last time she ran, and I would say, these are the legislative districts where we have House candidates. I want a walking list in one of these districts because I'm going to canvass for the House candidate at the same time that I canvass for Claire. Or when I was walking for Charlie Knorr with Charlie's list, I would take literature for Charlie, but I would also take literature. I think Doug Harpool was running for the state senate one of those years, and because there are never enough volunteers. So the more people you can help whenever you are doing whatever you're doing, the more efficient you are at being convincing people, talking to people about why helping Democrats is a good thing.
Right. Yeah.
You do that too, don't you?
I do, and I'm glad that you brought that up too, because it's always, ever since I've become a committee man, it's something that I've kind of struggled with, especially on the Kosser campaign. I want to know when people are in my precinct talking to my Democrats. You know what I mean? I'm
Right.
kind of possessive in that way, and so I want to know that, but I also don't want to be a burden and be like, you guys have to text me every time you're in my neighborhood or whatever, But trying to find that balance where, like I said earlier, we don't want it to be where, when these big candidates run, they bring in all this outside help, and then as soon as the campaign's over, win or lose, everybody's gone, all the organization's gone. Because I really think it's detrimental to our local party, it's detrimental to our local organizations, and it's not helpful.
Sometimes they can't share.
Right.
Particularly,
Well, that's true too. Yeah. If they're
especially if
statewide
you have a
or
federal
federal.
campaign and a non-federal campaign. There are election laws.
And if you have an organization that's participating like I am, there's a real I
Right.
don't even do any federal work at
Right.
the level I'm at.
So
for our
sometimes
organization.
people are boxed in. But I know I was doing Get Out the Vote canvassing for the coordinated campaign in 16. So I took a list that went into Randy Alperhaski's district. And I would give them the coordinated campaign, but I'd say, and then Randy Alper. And it was on a list of infrequent voters, which we have to turn out if we're going to win. And I would say, so do you know the candidate who's running for the state house in this district? And these infrequent voters don't pay attention to things. And they would say, no, I've never heard of him. They might have gotten 3 flyers, but they may not have paid attention to them.
Checked them.
So then I'd tell them about Randy, and they would say, oh, yeah, he sounds like a really good guy. So it's partially taking advantage of every contact that you have to make as much difference as
Yeah,
you
to
can.
that point, I actually wanted to run this idea by you. I talked to Krista Stark. I'm sure everybody knows she's their 7th Congressional District Chair. And I had this idea, and I think she probably had the same idea, was thinking along the same lines, that once the August election is over, that we as the 7th Congressional District can pool all of our resources together and say go to a different county each weekend, and then, knock on doors and make phone calls for those particular state candidates and Senate candidates in those counties, and just every single weekend kind of rotate the people, whoever's available, to every individual county. So, I don't know what you guys think of that, but I don't know if you've tried that before. Or...
My response is in Greene County, we're going to have so many House and Senate candidates that the more likely thing is that we would send the 7th congressional material out with the local candidates. It would be because there's no way we're going to reach every voter in every one of our House candidates' districts.
And also, what I was talking about earlier is get them now, because there will be people who will want to campaign for a certain person or within their own legislative district, and they wouldn't be open to going somewhere else, especially as the campaigns heat up. They won't be open to going to another county.
We had, like, the 135th, we lost by just 900 votes last time. So you want to make sure you go to every house in that district if you can.
Right.
But you'd also be getting help, like you said, from people outside the county. And your criticism for that is that they all disappear. But if we have that coordinated effort, you won't have them disappearing. They can come back to Greene County periodically, you know. So you're kind of building up that.
We put out the requests for anything any Democratic candidate asks. And because different people are motivated to do different things, and there may be people who care more about that House race than they do about anything else. So if you say, let's do this, there may be some people who care so passionately about that race that they will say, yeah, I like that, let's do it. And that'll be cool, because as long as they're working for somebody, it helps everybody.
Right. I think part of what you're alluding to as well, Jean, is like the idea that, you know, in some of our outer counties, in the more rural, much more red places, the candidates feel maybe more lonely because, you know, maybe they know they're running in this race where it's going to be a real hard, you know, chance for them to win. And they feel like, you know, they don't have the same support. So it's kind of like trying to find a balance between, we know that we can flip the, you know, 135, for example. We know that we should put as much time and effort as we can into that, but also, you know, finding the resources, finding the people where we can to, you know, give to our other candidates, so we're helping build the bench in other places. So we can start, you know, when we flip that seat, and then we flip maybe 134 one day, then we can start, you know, flowering out to all these other places where maybe now it's unlikely that we'll win, but, you know, 2 cycles from now, maybe it'll be within reach. So it's trying to find the balance between those two things. And I don't really know if I have a good answer for that, but I think Crystal's trying to help, at least with, you know, finding materials and tools and people to take pictures and websites and all that stuff to try to help some of the state house candidates, especially, so they don't feel so much as if like they're on their own and they're the only ones doing this. So
I want to make a point too, if I could, and
Yeah.
I know I think you have a
Yeah, I
point
was
or a
gonna
question,
jump on
but
that also, but go.
I am thinking of the importance of people running in every
Yes,
race, and I
absolutely.
ended from the volunteer standpoint. You know, we know there are some races that everybody runs to win, right? But we know there are some races that just are going to be probably not won. But it was when I started doing this work that I realized how important those races are, and how important it is that they still run, and how important it is that people still knock doors for them, because it keeps the whole conversation going. It keeps the whole narrative going about all of the causes and the things that affect our lives that we care about every day. And that is so important, because it's so detrimental to have this one huge chunk of land where there's no one opposing that candidate and the conversation isn't happening and they're not being challenged or asked any questions. So, all of the work that we do across the board is it helps the whole cause overall. And if any place is left, it really does damage us too. So, those people that feel like they're out there, in the middle of nowhere in these districts, they really need help too, and the whole party needs your help to walk for them and make phone calls for them, or just talk about them, tell your friends about them, give them name recognition, keep the conversation going.
It's just always finding the people who will canvass.
It's very,
a never
very difficult
ending challenge.
I want to encourage you all, at the same time that we of course do want to find what people are comfortable with. It's wonderful to see a volunteer doing something they really are comfortable with and that they enjoy and they're good at, and it really is, and I really mean that. It's great to see that. I also want to just challenge everyone to push outside your comfort zone. Just push outside it, because overall, candidates don't get elected unless all of us do a little something that might not be fun. That's why we call it work. I mean, it can be fun, it can be great hanging out with your people, but it's work, and part of everything fulfilling is maybe pushing outside your comfort zone and doing something that's not the greatest, but commit to one Saturday a month or every 2 months and going and knocking doors, even if you hate it. And chances are, the more you do it, most people find out it's really not that bad once you get used to it.
And
We
once
went
you-
out to dinner with some of Kathy and Alex's friends a few weeks ago, and they said they were committing 20 hours a week
Ooh,
each
fantastic.
to work
That is
for the McCaskill
fantastic.
campaign in West Plains. That was, and I thought, wow.
And what were you
I'm
going to say,
sorry.
Darren? You
Oh
were
no,
gonna
you're fine.
comment?
I was just gonna say, to build on what you said, like, the more you do it, the easier it gets. But also, even in that day, like when you first
Yes.
start phone calls, you're like, I don't really want to do this. But then, like yesterday, I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this. Maybe I should check Facebook. And then, like 2 calls in, I'm like, okay, what's the next one? What's the next one? So it gets easier even during that one day,
It
but
does.
even over a longer.
And you get your
period of time.
spiel going, and then
Uh-huh.
you'll have that one really good conversation that makes you feel great.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
This is great. And you'll
Absolutely.
like, I've hung up the phone and been like, I just had the most amazing conversation with this person.
So you would love this, the year that Charlie was running to defeat the woman. What was her name?
Oh, I don't remember.
I
Yeah,
talked
don't
to a
remember.
woman at the door and I said, you realize that this woman voted to allow businesses to decide whether women get contraceptive care. And she said, I know it, and that's the reason I'm starting at the top of the Democratic ticket and I'm voting for Democrats all the way down.
Yep.
And there was the name of a man on her list, and I said, so does this man share your views? And she said, he'd better.
Yeah.
Or he's already been told that's it.
Yeah.
I laughed about that one for a long time.
Are you going?
We're going to another meeting. Is there anybody who has one of those sheets of a candidate that you might really like to help? I already know yours. Okay. All right.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to make a comment that this is a great idea. You've actually given me a really good idea. I'm going to go down the list of candidates running for office across the state, since we don't have any in Taney County, and take them to our next Democratic Club meeting and see if anybody wants to make phone calls or donate to them.
Cool.
So,
Super.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It helps us all. I mean, I'm so glad I have Representative Haar is my representative where I live. And I'm so grateful for Representative Quaid and Peter Meredith and Deb Lavender, because they are there defending what I know is important to me in my life, even though my representative is not. So it's important to remember that statewide, we just have to support the people that hold our views dear and hold them accountable. And You know, there are quite a few, just as an example, there are a little smattering of Democrats right now that have some troubling votes about reproductive rights. If you find out about it, hold them accountable.
Absolutely.
Right, and in
Labor,
addition
too.
to the candidates
Yes.
that are running in Greene County, there are fantastic candidates running for state house across the state of Missouri. I got called from a call from Winston Apple the other day. He's running in top of the state. I don't remember the district. Billy Moffitt is running. He announced his candidacy on the very last day, and he got like over 400 likes on Facebook, which is astronomical. So he's got a good chance of running. Michaela Skelton almost won the last race that she was in, so she has a really good chance of winning. And there are other fantastic Democrats across the state running too.
Yeah.
I would encourage everyone to give them
Spread the
support as
love.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spread the love. Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna throw something out that I just didn't have. I'm kind of doing on my own. I asked the committee, the central committee, whether we had a booth in the fair this year, and we hadn't budgeted for it. It's not a presidential year, which is fine. I think there are 170,000 people or so that go through that fair, and probably 80% of them are from at least our congressional district, or some are from the 4th, and then there's people from you get a fewer percentage from each Senate district, but the 2 senators, there's quite a few, majority of the people at the fair, and then the House. I'm gonna ask the candidates if they want to get together somehow and have a booth, or else they could do their own if they can afford it, but it's $400 or $500, and it takes a lot of people to operate it. So if they join together, and I'm gonna ask them if they wanna do that and just share the expenses outside the central committee.
Yeah.
One problem I think that can be worked out easily is the fair usually runs, the primary election day is somewhere in the middle of the fair often, but that can be worked out and people could fight on till that day. What I did when I was in charge of that park, and I would go early Wednesday, before the thing opened, and take the unsuccessful candidates' literature off the table and take it back to headquarters sometimes, so they can have that. And go on, but I think that we could do it. I've noticed the list of candidates, and only maybe a few problems, maybe, I don't know, but you'd have to offer it to all equally, and then, maybe they do it equally, even though they're opposing that, I don't know, we'll see. And I'm gonna get the word out and see if
Yeah. That's a good idea. I tend to think
Yeah.
that we need to be places even not during presidential election years. Like
Yes, we do.
he and
I
I
think we
were
need
like
to
the
be
only two
fair.
Democrats at the 4th of July parade last year, or was
Yeah.
it this past year? It was you, me, and Derek. We were the only 3 Greene County Democrats.
How are
there.
you not going to show up for the 4th of July?
Well-
I don't care if it's an off year or not. We are patriotic year round every
Yeah.
year, aren't we?
And we've ceded, especially with that one, we've ceded that narrative to the Republicans
Yeah.
for no reason. Because
Yeah.
their president
Well, I'm afraid they'll
colluded
be
with
at
the
the
Russians to
fair.
win the presidential election.
Right
So.
to Life, the are always there, the Republicans are there with quite often.
They also-
And if
the
they're there and
Republicans
we're
has-
not there, people come by when they're at a booth, oh, I didn't know you'd have a booth, I didn't think there are enough Democrats to matter, well, they'll
Right.
think that.
And
They
we gotta
kind of took
change
over
that.
Veterans Day at the National
Yes.
Cemetery too, and I
Yes.
know that they call it a nonpartisan thing, but it's all Republicans.
We
They're
gotta
doing
stop.
it.
Yeah.
Well,
Memorial Day coming up.
Yeah, we've got
Jack Emery's been
be
fighting
there.
them about that being
Mhm.
equally, they won't let him have his thing on a certain sidewalk or something.
Yeah.
And every year they try to pretend like they're second-class citizens, democratic veterans.
I think we maybe have been preaching to the choir a little bit today with the people we had, but spread the word and thanks for coming. We appreciate everybody that came this weekend.
Water.
Oh, here's your pencil.
Wow.
And I sent you a text to ask you to text me those pictures.
Oh, okay.
If you will.
I can handle it.
Get
This
a
is
selfie.
yeah. Let's do. Thank you, Darren. Yeah.
Thank you guys for being here.
These are Vicky's. Do you want to take them to her? I was going to if you don't. I don't know if she intended to leave them or.
Oh, I don't know. Maggie just had told me to
Okay.